The year is 1970, and the Grateful Dead released 2 classic albums in 1 year. Working Men's Dead came first, but we're setting our sights on American Beauty. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Eric, another great music episode, a family affair.
Yeah,
You got it.
Yep.
Which I love.
I feel like we're in this family's living room.
Yeah.
Like
I love
always
this.
feel at home.
I love this family. I love these guys. I do.
Yeah.
I love these guys.
Yeah.
You know what? Actually, if we did Cat Stevens, we could probably get Mom on too.
That's right.
I was gonna suggest that. See, when you were throwing names around, I was like, "What about Mom?
Yeah.
What's she doing?" Yeah,
Yeah, but
If you do T for the Tillerman, you get my mother.
there you go.
But Cat Stevens has the song "Father and Son."
That's right.
So it's kind of we could bring her in. We'll find the right one. And if we do this long enough, Chris's kids will age into this.
That's right. They're already trying to do it.
Do an Elton John album, you get my son pretty quick.
That's one of the reasons why I want to keep doing this. Is if we do it long enough, your kids will be of age, and then we can have them on too. So that's just my long
You don't
term
want to do it on Taylor Swift.
Yeah, you don't want to do it on Taylor Swift. That's my daughter's.
You know what? If we stay at this long enough, she'll be a classic artist.
That's true.
1989 is a good record. I'm not gonna lie.
If we get long enough in the tooth, she'll be a classic artist that we can bring to. So, if you haven't, if you're just joining us for the first time, it's not usually this disorganized, but we're having fun, and we love having Mr. Christopher Clark on. Welcome back for another episode. How are you, sir?
Always good. Very good. Always good to be back.
Yeah, and making his second triumphant appearance, Mr. Kevin Clark. The patriarch.
Patriarch of the Clark. Yes.
That's right.
The pedofamilius, as they say in Oh Brother, right?
Huh?
I'm a damn pedofamilius. So welcome, and that's not a bad term. It's a good
I
term.
was gonna say it sounds a little.
Yeah.
No, it's not. If you've never seen Oh Brother, we're out now. George Clooney has like 5 kids or 6 kids.
Yeah.
Finally returns home, and his wife got a new father. He's like, well, I'm the pedofamilius. I'm the father. So, Kevin, welcome aboard. Thank you so much for making time to come back for another episode. I enjoy having you on because you're someone that was there for this, like in the heyday, also. So it's nice to get that perspective, also, which is a lot of fun. And if you're new to this show, go ahead and hit the follow button. This way you get notified whenever new episodes come out, which is always great. And this way you don't have to worry about it. We've got enough to worry about in life. Our podcast shouldn't be one. We'll just let you know. We'll give you a notification. Bing, there we are.
Yeah. Yep.
The late great Felix Pappalardi used to follow this show before we left.
I was trying to figure out if we could hang a picture.
Yeah.
behind
Where are you going to drop the name? I was waiting patiently.
Believe me, I was going to drop it at some point.
Yep.
it. He produced this record.
I'm going to slide them in strategically throughout the episode, and that will, if you want to get in on that joke, you have to listen to our Blood on the Tracks episode.
You did the colors with White Room. He produced White Room, right?
See?
That's right.
He's slowly working he's creeping into our show, Felix Pappalardi. Who would have ever thought the most unlikeliest of music figures?
Yeah.
Is
Now
now
have to do Nantucket Sleigh Ride now.
he's memeing into
All right,
our
let's stick to the Grateful Dead right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get cracking with this. We're talking about American Beauty from the Grateful Dead. If you're new to our show, we do a little statistical information, some facts, and then we get into the fun stuff. So let's get that rolling. Let's get the ball rolling.
Yeah, I'm taking the shirt off because it's a little warm in here. There you go. See,
For this time of year, it's still unseasonably warm still.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But we're inching towards the colder weather. We'll get there eventually. So, but this album, American Beauty, was released in November of 1970. Like I said, it was the second release in 1 year.
Yep.
For the Grateful Dead, which is actually, Eric, the more we do these episodes and the more we go back into like the early 70s, it seems like the early 70s is where a lot of artists would double up.
Yeah.
Like it was a thing. Like they would just kind of boom, boom, put stuff out. Very prolific time. And even for the Dead, the fact that it's 2 studio albums in a row.
Yes. And it's very similar in tone and structure. Yeah. So
and we're going to talk about that a little bit too. That I think this that brings up a nice discussion point about the band. So this was released in November of 1970, produced by the Grateful Dead and Steve Barnard, but not Felix Pappalardi.
No, not Felix Pappalardi.
No.
He was not involved in this one.
No, he was not.
There was one single from this release. It was Truckin'. It hit number 64, but that didn't make a difference because the Dead never really kind of chart action never really stopped them. It wasn't their thing.
Yeah, they weren't.
Nice to have, but they never really had it until like, In the Dark came out, which we did an episode on. So if you want to go check out our other episode about the Grateful Dead, it was In the Dark. This hit number 30 on Billboard, and it's double platinum, but 2 million out the door, but it actually didn't hit double platinum status till like 1998. It did good out of the gate, but it was a slow roll.
Yep.
Let's start with Kevin. What's the deal with this album? Were you on it from the jump?
From the beginning, I remember it. Okay, and what we remembered was it was done 4 months after Working Man's Dead, which was very unusual. And the song that I liked the most was "Box of Rain," which was actually sung by Phil Lesh,
The late Phil Lesh.
the late great, and he wrote this with Robert Hunter. And it was a little unusual, even like Sugar Magnolia was written by Bob Ware and Robert Hunter. Robert Hunter usually just worked with Jerry Garcia.
Yeah. Robert Hunter was starting to really be a bigger presence in the Grateful Dead lore at this point, right?
Right. But when I think of these two albums, I think that the Grateful Dead could have put these two albums out, Working Man's Dead, American Beauty, and stopped, and we'd still be talking about them, even if they didn't do all those shows and all those concerts. I think they're two classic albums they put out. It was a tremendous year for them.
I think most people probably, Chris or Eric, jump in on this, think that they probably haven't done anything after this was kind of not up to, they kind of started to go into some jazzy stuff and really looking into different directions.
Well, I mean, for me, what I'll say is like, when it comes to the Grateful Dead, I was one of those people. First of all, I didn't come to the Grateful Dead till I was in my 30s. Like, I couldn't stand the Grateful Dead. Like, my father went through a big Dead phase when I was in high school. I couldn't understand it. I for whatever reason. And then at the time I was working in Manhattan, and I was taking the subway to work, and I worked in a performing arts school, and I was helping the kids work on the show Hair. So I was listening to a lot of 60s music, and that had me listening to the Grateful Dead. And that's when I finally started to catch on. So I'm one of those Grateful Dead fans where I don't listen to the studio records at all. Anything that I listen to with the Grateful Dead is always like finding shows. And I know that there's certain years, like I love 1977. I love 72, 71. Like I'll jump around like as far as live shows and say, well, this is the different eras I want to listen to. Working Man's Dead and American Beauty are the only two studio albums that I really regularly listen to by the Grateful Dead because they're just so perfectly recorded. They're the ones that you really listen to, and you could say like, not that they didn't put any effort into the other records, but they just kind of like, instead of like where you have Oxomoxoa where they're experimenting, or Anthem of the Sun where it's like half live and half studio, this is where they were like, we're going to knuckle down and we're going to focus. And then they decided to focus on vocals, which is not something the Dead typically does. The Grateful Dead, you don't think about vocals. You think about Jerry Garcia being an amazing guitar player, Phil Lesh playing in a style similar to McCartney where the bass lines are a song within themselves, and then the drums sound like sneakers in the dryer most of the time. But by the same token, like these two records, they really did focus. And a lot of people will say, well, it has to do with the fact that they were working. Garcia was working a lot at the time with Crosby, Stills and Nash. He played pedal steel on Teach Your Children, and as payment for that, David Crosby helped them to get their vocals tight, which Crosby says is crap because they already knew how to do that. But
you could see that they put in effort. You could hear the effort that they put into.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Those two records are masterpieces.
Yeah, what Crosby said though, there was that a cross pollination that even if there wasn't any direct influence or training or here's how you do vocals, Crosby said all these people were just hanging out and just kind of being in, the whole Laurel Canyon era and everything that was going on there. And people just kind of drifting in and out, all these artists, and kind of just hanging and maybe picking it up, through osmosis, like that way, Eric, right? It's kind of like, because I think, go ahead, Kevin.
Crosby, Stills and Nash, people don't realize it now, was so pop. They were like the Beatles back then, So I'm sure there was a little that they wanted to try to be like them. You know, there was a little, competition here and there. You know,
Yeah, I can't see how you could listen to Addicts of My Life and not get that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like that song is like their purest vocal sounding song. I was blown away when I'm listening to it. I'm like, I couldn't believe, because they're not just singing together, but they are doing those different harmonies, Eric, right? Where one person is moving in the vocal lines, almost a la the Beach Boys as well.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, effort. I was a late bloomer myself with the Dead. So what didn't really, they were kind of hit and miss for me as far as especially vocally. I always found that their vocals could be a little lazy and just sort of almost tuneless at times. But on this record, yeah, it's the effort is clear. But I love the flow. This album just has a really great flow to it. Just
absolutely does.
Every song just kind of sort of just blends into one another in a sense of like there's no filler. There's no, every song is just spot on. Yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like, Eric, that they almost found like their niche, right? Because before this, there was a live album, then there was the Oxo Moxoa, which was kind of trippy and psychedelic. And this, from the research I was doing, the Bakersfield sound is mentioned a lot as kind of an influence, and kind of folk rock and Americana and Working Man's Dead. And these were literally recorded back to back. So there is a similarity. There's an overall feel, right? That they started to kind of hone in on and not as kind of throw it against the wall and see if it sticks.
But they were decidedly their own thing though too. Mm-hmm. I mean, you listen to them and they, they're not really trying to sound like Crosby, Stills and Nash, or, it's similar genre, but I mean, I think it's their very own thing. And I think that has largely to do with, the musicianship as well. I mean, Garcia's guitar playing, Phil Lesh, who had never played bass guitar. That blew my mind when I was studying up on Phil Lesh. Admittingly, I'm not that familiar with it. I only know him through the jam band circuit now. Yeah, of him playing with like Tedeschi Trucks Band and all these other and Fish and all these other guys. They all know each other so well. I think I might have even seen a show where he was there. I'm sure, because they have so many guest stars that come and go. But But yeah, but you would never it's amazing stuff. I mean, his playing is just awesome. But
from these two albums, though, you also see these are songs that they keep going throughout their career.
Yeah,
that they play live. Sugar Magnolia is almost a guarantee that they play
a lot of times. I mean, like it's not like they play it every night, but it's one that you're
Casey Jones from
we saw them do Casey Jones less than 50.
Working Man's Dead.
Mm-hmm.
It was just an era back then, right, Chris? That kind of.
Well, what I was going to say to you is like they hit a groove, like, and what I think with this record too is that you see really truly what a leader Garcia was, and like where Garcia went, so too did the band, because Garcia wanted to focus on the vocals. Like if you ever hear any of the interviews, if you watch, there was a documentary put out a few years ago on Prime, and I can't think of the name of it now. It's something with the title of the band, but in the documentary, there's a video of Garcia where Phil Lesh and Bob Weir are at his feet, and he's kind of guiding them through the vocals, almost like a choir teacher would to high school students. And then it's also his influence of, he was very much into, before the Dead and he got into blues and into rock and roll, you had him doing things like bluegrass and folk music and all that Americana stuff. That's all truly Garcia's influence. So I think this is really where you see Garcia always was very much a go with the flow kind of guy, but I feel like on these two records is where he really took the lead and said, this is where I think we need to go.
Yeah, and with the addition of him taking up playing the pedal steel, and also the addition of David Grisman on mandolin, who Garcia would partner with Grisman independently also. So you're seeing a maturity of the band. They're getting out of the whole psychedelic thing, and let's just let's see where the music goes and kind of be weird for weird's sake, perhaps. I think what you're seeing here is a refining. Yeah, they're kind of like, yeah, we're kind of influenced by what, like I said, this Bakersfield sound, which most notably was Buck Owens, but this isn't that rockabilly Buck Owens. It's a different feel.
Right.
Creedence Clearwater Revival came out of the Bakersfield sound. There was a lot of groups that were influenced by it, so they took what they needed from it and then incorporated it into the Dead sound. So you get this kind of, like Eric said, this album, American Beauty, you can just kind of put it on and just let it go. I think that's what you do with it is you just kind of put it on and you just kind of roll with it. And even the songs that I thought, in listening to this, like for me, like that song Operator was kind of a little outlier, but the more I listen to it, I'm like, no, that it fits.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only vocal, I'm like, at first I'm like, it's not there. And then the more I listen to it, I'm like, this actually absolutely just fits in with it, Kevin.
And then for me too, what I was going to say is like, another thing that really sticks out to me with this record is it's one of the few records I'll listen to by the Grateful Dead, and like the lyrics will have some meaning for me. Like like Ripple and Broke Down Palace are two songs that are really important to me because, I remember listening to them at two very, difficult, and my dad's going to say I'm probably being sappy here, but like there are two very difficult times in my life where those two songs, I played them, and it wasn't because it was a Grateful Dead song, it was because of the lyrics. Like I remember listening to Ripple when my daughter was in the hospital when she was younger. And then I remember playing Broke Down Palace in the car with my son when I came here to see my grandmother before she passed away. So like, there's not many Grateful Dead songs you're going to listen to where you think about like the lyrics and the lyrics hold some meaning to you, or you are able to internalize them in some way. Like usually when I'm listening to the Dead, it's because I want to hear Jerry Garcia do what Jerry Garcia does, not because.
So let me ask you a question off of that. Were you already into the Dead when that happened, or did that?
Yes, I was. I very much into the Dead. Okay. I was very much into the Dead.
So
at the time.
It wasn't something that turned you on to the Dead.
No. The live
one of
stuff.
the things is what you said. Sorry, but I'm with you. And maybe Kevin can help sort this out. People are either really into the Dead or they're very ambivalent about the Dead.
Yes,
they don't necessarily hate. Like they don't necessarily hate the Dead. People either really love them or people are just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, right. Where did you fall into this when you first heard this? Was there a learning curve?
For me, when I first heard the song Uncle John's Band, and I was probably about 13 or 14 at the time, and that's when I started. I got those two albums and listened to them, and then after that they put out believe it or not, a greatest hits album on Reprise, which had basically American Beauty and Working Man's Dead and some of the earlier stuff like St. Stephen. But I used to listen to it all the time. Believe me, I had a cousin in Jersey. He was into it. We listened to that album all the time.
Cousin Tommy was a Dead?
Not Cousin Tommy, Cousin Michael. You don't remember.
See, the elusive Cousin Michael.
I don't know where he is now.
So Chris, what turned you? What
is like I kept coming, but see, the thing I never understood about the Dead is like everybody who talks about the Dead used to talk about what a genius Garcia was, and everybody talked about how amazing he was, and I guess it was kind of like Springsteen for me too, because I have this thing with Springsteen too. It's just like, why don't I like them? Like, and I was, again, when I was I was 16, 17 when my dad, I'm telling you, you went through a really huge Dead phase when I was in high school. And I could not understand it for the life of me. And then I would encounter people in my life who loved the Dead, and I'd try it and I'd be like, I can't effing do this. And then I don't know what it was, if it was just like constantly on the train ride to work. I guess it blended really well with either me grading papers or reading a book on the subway in the morning. And it just kind of started to sink in. Like, I don't know why. I can't explain why. maybe it came along when I was looking for something different to listen to. But I'm telling you, I was at least 34 or 35 before I really started getting into the Grateful Dead. And Jonathan, the same thing.
But the people that are into the Dead, man, it is a way of life for them.
Yes.
They play tape and all this stuff. And even going to see Dead and Company.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the fans. I mean, it's a great show. Sometimes the band isn't quite up to par, but you know what? Even still, you still get into it.
Go for it. So Eric, where are you on this spectrum?
I think I probably got into them because of my sister. Because my sister she was friends with some really big Deadheads, and like you say, I mean, they're the most loyal. They're the most. I mean, when Jerry Garcia passed, it was like oh my God, the world ended for some of these people. They were just so devoted. And, but yeah, I mean, I was kind of turned on. She turned me on to Mars Hotel, which I kind of dig. I like the jammy kind of stuff, the jazzier, side. But really, I wasn't a diehard though. I mean, I appreciated them, but I wasn't really a fan. I don't think at this point, I don't think I could say that I'm a true fan, but I do like them. I do appreciate them. I do respect them. And especially because of some of the band members, some of the musicians in the band and where they came from. See, for me, I dig, I love hearing their story. I like who influenced them. I love reading up on Phil Lesh, that he was a big Coltrane fan, and he introduced that aspect to the band, got them into jazz, got them listening to this kind of other type of stuff, which, that kind of influence and that kind of, just them all sitting around. We're talking about like, hey, when did we get into them? But just imagine like them as band members, like, oh, how, like, I want to get into this guy and this guy. Let me introduce you to this. And, and they're all sitting in around listening to all this great music, and they're coming together collectively and making something special, or being influenced by it. So
it seemed like they were very democratic. It also seemed like a very democratic band where,
exactly.
You got something to input. Go ahead. It's unlike the Beatles where George would get one track and, you people were kind of sequestered into their roles where the Dead is kind of like, whatever. If you got something interesting,
came up with a good song. Exactly.
Yeah. Let's record it. And let's see what happens. Kevin, quiz question for you. Do you know what an ambigram is?
I do not.
You do not. This album cover is an ambigram.
Is that where you turn it around and it still says the same thing?
No. Oh. What it is this album, for those watching on YouTube, or those not watching on YouTube, is I'm holding up the album cover, and it's written in a very particular style of font, where it says American Beauty, but it also says American Reality.
Oh,
yeah.
So it can be read in two different ways. So it's called American Beauty, but it's also can be called American Reality.
That's amazing.
So this album cover is what's called an ambigram, where you can kind of interpret it one way and interpret it another way. Let's continue the show and tell. Kevin Clark, do you remember the Westchester County Fair?
Yep.
At Yonkers Raceway?
That's it, sure.
I got this shirt at the Westchester County Fair in the 90s.
There's the turtle.
There you go, man.
That's actually a good shirt, man.
I was at the time I was not a Dead fan, and I'm still. I probably like Eric. I can't call myself a Dead fan.
Yeah. Steal Your Base. They had that song "Steal Your Face."
Yep.
Yeah, but it's called "Steal Your Base." So I won this. I won it at the Westchester County Fair, and I wore it to death because I just think it was a cool graphic.
Mm.
And I wore it so much that I had to go back to the Westchester County Fair like a year or two later, and hopefully the guy was there that had like the game where I could win it. I think it was you had to shoot the water into the balloon, and the balloon, you got the shirt, and he was there, and I won it. And I this shirt has not been worn, and it is from the Westchester County Fair, probably circa the 90s, in perfect condition. So if you want to make an offer, Kevin, we can talk offline. It's an XL.
There you go.
Unworn, pre-shrunk.
Very cool.
We have a place here in Frederick, downtown Frederick, a place called Z-Bop. And it's all like Dead, T-shirts, posters. It's like the old like 60s vibe. The clothes that they made are all handmade. There's a lot of hemp products in the store. Purses and things like, all great stuff. I got a couple of T-shirts that's just Dead related, and just the mosaic. I have one where it's the skeleton is like into the old style RCA, like Victrola, like the big, and he's like singing into it. But you have all the little characters like the turtle and those guys like on the ground, and so I mean, it's just the art is just amazing. They're
enduring. They're an enduring band. And now, interesting thing at the time, at the time of this was recorded, they were with Warner Brothers, and with Working Man's Dead, their contract was about to expire.
We're ready to write them off.
Unbeknownst to Garcia, Mickey Hart's father, Lenny, went ahead and renewed the contract and then decided to take the money and leave.
He took off.
I don't know if Steve Miller was around at the time, and maybe that's where he got to take the money and run.
Mickey
But
Hart actually left the band because, although they didn't want him to, he left the band because of that.
Because he was he was embarrassed that he was.
He felt his father had taken their money.
He felt guilty about it, and I think he left like a year after the record came out.
Oh wow!
And then he actually what happened was they played because they used to play. For those of you from the New York area, they used to play a place in the early '70s called the Capitol Theater in Port Chester, New York. And he came out for the first show. It came out for the first set or the first show at the Cap, and then the show or the set after that. I forget what it was, but it was like he was there for one and not for the other. And you can actually, if you hear the recording of the show, they talk about him not being there because he's sick. But it's because he quit the band.
He quit the band.
Wow. I think on the deluxe version of American Beauty, I think the 1972 show is there. Yep. The Grateful Dead figure heavily into the Capitol Theater in Port Chester, New York. For me, just to get back to what Eric was saying is, I've kept the Dead at arm's length too, and I don't think I could tell you right now, full disclosure, I've never listened to a live show, and I know that's the bread and butter of the Dead is
it
is the live experience. But so for me, and maybe I represent this faction, I'm not a 12-minute song guy.
Yeah.
12
minutes. That's pretty short for that.
Honestly, and maybe that's what keeps me at arm's length is I'm listening to these albums.
Yeah.
And I'm loving it. I'm loving what they're doing. I'm loving seeing the band grow and progress and kind of refine what they're doing. And I understand that the live stuff is as or more important. They are one of the few bands that would release live albums and say, we don't need to release a studio album because the new stuff is on the live album.
Yeah.
Well, and I was if you really think about it too, and you talk about the Dead and you talk about this album and Working Man's, it actually starts I guess over the course of 2 years, like a 4-album run where you've got this. I mean, you've got Working Man's, you got this. Then the record after it might be one of my favorite Grateful Dead records of all time, and I think it's all new stuff. I don't think there's anything on
that, Skull and Roses?
Skull and Roses is a live album, but it's all original material with some overdubbing. And then after that, you got Europe 72.
And I'm going to tell you, on those 2 live albums, you don't have those 12-minute, 15-minute.
Those are good.
Those are good live albums.
Especially Skull and Roses is a good first step if you're going to listen to a live.
So Skull and Roses is a good entree for.
Yep. But I'm going to be honest with you. Personally, I think they put too much, with all the Dick's picks and the archives, and I think they have too much.
Wait, slow down. You said that a little too fast. People might have taken that the wrong way. Explain.
Dick's pick is the guy. That's what they call
Dick Lodavala was the archivist.
I know what you meant.
I didn't mean to put it in a bad way, but I personally think that they have too much of that. They've almost
flooded the market.
I mean, it is really.
You got it, and you got to know what you're looking for because some of it's amazing and some of it's bad. Some of it's just I don't know why they put this out. Yeah, there's a lot. But
here's the thing, though. They openly encouraged tapers. They would have taper sections.
They see the mics go up. Yes,
yeah. And even now, you go to
that, this stuff should be for everybody.
And if you go to a Phil, before Phil died, I think his son's going out now as Graham and Friends, but. If you go to see that band, you still see the microphones in the air. We've gotten to see Dark Star Orchestra, and they've got the microphones in there. But people told them not to do that. You're giving your stuff away. But I mean, that's the genius of hey, man, they're not our fans, they're our friends. That really paid off. They were selling out stadiums in the 90s, right?
Yeah. So Eric, what did that do? It made them more popular, right? When you're saying you could come in and record this, we're not going to stop you.
Yep.
It was probably reverse psychology on their end, right?
Yeah, it's a way, like you said, it's a way of life. These fans they're like family. It's just a large group of just people who enjoy just the music. Just kind of carries you somewhere. But a lot of these artists, even today, it's this camaraderie within the bands, within the fans, within, just you hear people talk on message boards about how I went to the show the other night and I met this guy and I met that guy. And I met him. I haven't seen this guy in 20 years, but he was there, because he's still a fan, like that we hooked up and we did this. And it's an amazing, that to me is why I'm interested in these kinds of bands. I may not like everything that they do, but it's that attitude. It's that sort of, so often we hear we love bands that are just so much infighting, and it's like you just get tired of the negativity and the toxic nature of a lot of this stuff. And it's so refreshing to hear these people love this stuff so much. And that's the way they come at it, is with love and just appreciation. And these guys work hard. I mean, you're talking, they're probably playing like how many shows a year and then nonstop, and they never play the same show twice and that kind of thing. And it's just, that's not easy to do. That's these guys are, working stiffs. And I admire all of these types of bands that are out there now doing that as their bread and butter, and, just keeping that alive, so, yep. Gentlemen.
And really kind of like trying to fill those big shoes that the Dead left behind. Like you had, I guess Phish picked up the mantle in the 90s, and now you've got a lot of other bands like Humphreys McGee and the String Cheese Incident. And now you've got the big one now that a lot of people are starting to catch on to is Goose. And to Eric's point, my younger brother, I'm not a Goose fan by any stretch of the amount. They're not a band I've really, I guess I got to really.
They are a true jam band.
Yeah. So, but my brother will go, he's followed them around. He's gone to see them at Red Rocks. He's got to have seen like 20, 30 shows at this point.
He's running like,
and
he's
just like he said, he's run into people. Like
he's running to people.
Specifically through seeing them at shows. This is a guy I saw in Colorado. Now I'm seeing him in Saratoga. Like it's that kind of thing.
But they're a true jam band.
Yeah. So Kevin, did you see these guys back in the day?
Grateful Dead? No, I never did.
What
I saw was Dead and Company. I've seen them about 4 times, but I never saw the Grateful Dead.
And then we've got
that's amazing.
I was a father very young, so I had other responsibilities.
Don't blame it on him.
Hey, you should have took them. See, you just
some people there with
baby. Yeah, I've seen people bring their kids and
get a sitter.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Let's go back to this album a little bit more, because again, it's easy to talk about the Dead in such a abstract ways, because they do so many different things and they broke so many norms. Like we said, like Eric said, they kind of subverted concerts too by they would go out on tour, not really to support an album, just to kind of play what they wanted. And and even when I went to just go see Jeff Lynne's ELO, it's a very strict set. They played the exact same stuff, where these guys had, you as much as they also get derided for their quote unquote ability to play, they've always gotten dragged for that. I know, like they're like, oh, these guys are just like ramshackle and like, not really, because if you're going out there and touring as much as they do and playing all these different songs, there's got to be something in there.
Now you think of Dead and Company, John Mayer. Think of all the songs that he had to learn.
Yeah.
Because they're going out, they're playing all different songs at different shows every night.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And he's done it all. I mean, he's done the proper set lists, the kind of shows that you're just playing the same thing every night type of thing. And then he started got a little bit more loose, like started playing at Crossroads, the Eric Clapton's Crossroads festivals and things like that. So he started getting more and more into sort of like getting out there and just, But I mean, talented people, man. They're just
Let me throw a question out there, because as I listen to this album a lot, the song "Sugar Magnolia" started to stand out for me, but for a particular reason, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but I looked it up and I never saw any cross pollination. But and maybe this album overall started to remind me of the band.
Yep.
But the song "Sugar Magnolia" specifically, I draw a direct line to the song "Up on Cripple Creek."
Yep, I agree.
Kevin's
all vibes, for sure. Lyrically and everything, it is a similar vibe.
Like the American, but they never played together. They only have Bob Dylan in common.
But that's not true though.
They did.
They
played
did.
They played in the 80s together, but that was after Robbie Robertson was gone, so I'm not counting that. Sorry.
No. Wait. In 19, actually, the T-shirt that I have of the Grateful Dead, it's in 1970. They went on a train tour of Canada called the Festival Express,
and
and it was like right around. I don't know if it was before this record was released or after. It might have been the summer before.
I think it was 1970.
Yeah,
Janis Joplin was still alive.
Right. So it was Janis Joplin, them, the band, Buddy Guy, and I forget who else, but those were the big ones.
Film of that. There was a film of that, right?
And there's video.
There was a movie of it.
And then there's video of like where you see Garcia. They're on the train and Garcia's playing guitar and Rick Danko's singing, and
right.
So there was a little bit of cross pollination.
Okay, right. Played.
Watkins Glen.
Watkins Glen.
They played at Watkins Glen together. Yep.
But see, that's not surprising. For me, it's not surprising that these guys would cross paths.
Because the band also represented that Americana sound.
And then later on, Levon Helm actually covered Tennessee Jet on one of his solo records.
Yeah. So I'm I was.
Operator gets me. Operator, it's like it's saying the same exact thing that Jim Croce's Operator is saying. I thought it was at first I thought it was like almost a cover or who covered who kind of thing, but it's the same sort of Operator, help me get it. I mean, I'm like, wow.
And and the other thing too,
Go ahead.
And to Eric's point, I think just while we're on the subject of that is like this is really where, Pigpen is one of those guys that because he wasn't like, he clearly didn't play keyboards on this because he was really just kind of a guy that was able to like bang out chords on a Hammond organ, but he really did have a big influence on the band too. Like, Pigpen is responsible for them being into things like the blues. He was a really good harp player. He played really good harmonica, and he was kind of like their front man. It was like the closest they ever had to a front man was him. Like,
I think I read it was supposed to be him. Like he was supposed to be like the lead guy.
Yeah. And on the 72 tour, right before he died, when he was on. And like some of the songs are great. And then some of them I know Deadheads love it. I can't stand when they do Love Light, like Turn On Your, but like when he sings songs like Operator, there's another song he sings on this record too. And I'm blanking on it right now.
Is it Candyman? No.
Wasn't there another song he had to leave?
No, he only has one. He's only got one.
Right. But like he's got a good voice. Like he's a decent singer.
Yeah.
But
yeah, when he went his is a little Kevin. His vocal delivery is a little rougher, a little gruffer, which adds another different texture.
Exactly, it does. But unfortunately, like he went on to 72, they didn't want him to go to Europe.
He insisted.
He told not to go to Europe, but he went anyway. And
after that,
it's a shame. It was sad that he died very young.
Yeah, and he wasn't into the substances. He enjoyed drinking.
He was drinking.
And he started what Bruce Hornsby was afraid that would be the keyboard curse.
The hot seat.
Yeah, that's right. That he was very reticent to have anything to do with them because Brent Midland had also passed away, and he's kind of like, this is not a chair I want to occupy. Kind of like
Keith Godchild died. He died a year after Keith Godchild died a year after he left the band in 70 or 80, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it was a rough. The rest of the band was pretty stable, although they did. The Godchills kind of came and went for a little bit, but. Back to this, you've got Box of Rain, which is Phil Lesh's kind of signature song, right? And again, what amazed me about this album is that even though there's different vocalists, there's still a similar feeling throughout. Like it wasn't each guy was an outlier doing just here's my stuff, and it does, it's going to be whatever it is. It seemed like they were all in sync with each other, Kevin, though, right? Which is important.
It was almost like you can't tell who was singing the lead vocals. That's right.
Yeah, Phil Lesh actually sounds a lot like Bobby.
Sounds like Bob Ware.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. So it's got this loose feel to it, but there has to be some cohesion as well underpinning it.
Right.
I don't think it happens by accident, right? I think that these guys knew what they were doing. It just comes off so effortlessly, right, Eric? It sounds like they're just kind of showing up.
Yeah. And they've been doing this for quite some time, right? I mean, they're just, but finally, like you say, it's that sense of refinement that it's gone. And the songs, I mean, what's the longest song on the record? I think it's Candyman. I think that's over.
Candyman's like 6 or 7 minutes.
Yeah, that's like the longest. It's the bluesiest song. But I mean, like we're talking 2-3 minute songs for the Dead. That's
It's concise. It's the most
I think they understood the mission when they were making albums.
Yeah.
Right. They understood that this is just a way to get people to the shows, and then when you come to the show, we're going to give you what we really do.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the whole experience. And that, I think that's what made them so unique. And at this time, by the time this album came out, which is interesting, it was their 5th studio album and 6th overall. So they'd already had a live album out. But then after this, they wouldn't have a studio album for another 3 years because there would be greatest hits and live albums in the place of the studio albums.
The live albums with new material.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what they would use to kind of supplant going into the studio. It's like, well, we did it live, we recorded it here.
And plus, they also, Jerry Garcia put out a solo album, then and Bob Weir.
And then actually after that, after you have that 4-album run in 72, you have Ace by Bob Weir, which is basically a Grateful Dead album in all but name. And then you have, was it Garcia, right?
Garcia, also a Grateful
Dead album. Right, it's Bill Kreutzmann playing drums. Yeah, so.
They're 2 good albums. Yeah, 2 good solo albums.
It was really productive period for the Dead, for sure.
So Kevin, what on this what on American Beauty really kind of stood out is there anything that stood out to you then that you still take with you now, or has it changed as you've gotten older? Has things kind of changed for you?
Box of Rain, when I liked it when it first came out, but now it's taken a little bit more thing because Phil Lesh actually, when I read about it, wrote that song for his father who was dying.
Yep.
So, I mean, it really was kind of nice, and he was very concerned about getting it done and singing it to him and stuff. So that song has a little bit of meaning to me since my parents have passed away and stuff. But it's a good song, and I love Sugar Magnolia, which Bob Weir wrote about his girlfriend. So,
Kevin, Chris, what about you? What's
probably Candyman, just for the harmonies on it. I just love it's just like this slow. It's just like this slow groove with these really beautiful harmonies, and Ripple and Broke Down Palace are the 2 that I always listen to more than any other. I love Grisman's mandolin playing on it, and there's one of those classic album shows. I went back and I watched it last week, and Grisman's on it, and he goes, "Well, if they had let me play what I actually wanted to play and not just towards the end in the chorus," and he starts playing along to the whole song, and I almost wish there was a version out where he was playing more mandolin, because I think that really does make the tune.
Eric, what about you?
Geez, I love Ripple. I love Sugar Magnolia. Yeah, Box of Rain. That's probably that's the song that drew me, because I think Phil Lesh had just passed, and that was the idea for us to even talk about this album to begin with. So that kind of that was his signature song, and he hadn't written all that many, but yeah, it's a hell of a song. So yeah, I would say that's probably for me the best song on the album. But there's some really nice ditties on the Candyman I like too, because I'm blues guy, so I'm into that. But yeah, I love the way it just kind of rolls, and But yeah, that's good.
And it's funny. Every song but "Operator," which was written by Pigpen, is co-written by Robert Hunter.
Right, Robert Hunter.
It seems like he seems to be the secret sauce on this album as well. Is working because he works with it's Bob Weir and Hunter, Jerry Garcia and Hunter.
He's there, Bernie Taupin.
Yep.
Yeah, so he seemed to be able to but with Bernie Taupin, he only had one client. Right. In this case, he's got to work with these different guys who have different styles, different ways of singing, different points of view, and be able to adapt that, right? Which is a formidable weapon to have.
Yeah, I mean, he's the only non-performing member of a band to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with a band. Yeah. Like they inducted him, and then I always was blown away.
Didn't he get inducted with Elton John?
Taupin got in
as a
non-performer after. Like he's
got it.
Hunter is in as a member of the Dead.
Interesting.
But what I always found amazing is that he wrote like the prolificness of his abilities. Like he wrote Ripple and Broke Down Palace in the same day. Two of his most renowned sets of lyrics were written on the same day. Like like the ability to be able to do something like that is crazy. Like it's just a gift.
I don't been drinking some Ripple.
Well, there was if you continue reading the article, he was definitely on something when he did it for sure. But,
Yeah, well, they say that's what for me. I said it in the beginning, but I think "Addicts of My Life," just for me, it just brought this album to a whole other level.
Those harmonies are crazy.
Yeah, I really couldn't believe, because of their reputation and because everything sounds so loosey goosey by design. When you get to "Addicts of My Life," I felt it probably should have been the closing song. Actually, Truckin', it's almost like a come down, like where Truckin' is placed after it because
it is a weird spot.
Yeah,
You're right.
It's weird. You could have rearranged.
Yeah, because it's like Truckin' almost seems like an afterthought after having that song where they just really put so much into it, and like I said, the vocal work is just astounding on it. And
let's be honest, how played out is Truckin' at this point?
Yeah, right.
You know what's another great song, and it just makes me feel good. I don't even know really what it's about. It's "Friend of the Devil." I think that's a great song. I'm telling you,
And that's one of the few times where I'll say the studio version is better than the live version, because what they started doing with that song live was they turned it into like the slow ballad.
Yeah,
and it's awful. I'd be disappointed if I saw them do it.
You feel good listening to it. It's a good song.
Yeah,
I think this is. For some reason, I have it on vinyl. Chris was texting me earlier in the week, and I'm like, I have this on vinyl. I don't even remember where I got it.
Yeah.
Which is very Grateful Dead of me, I suppose. I got Workingman's Dead and this. I'm not sure if I bought it at a record store and it was just there, and I'm like, I need to probably have something in the collection. But I'm glad I do, because like I said, you can just kind of on the vinyl or however you want to listen to it, you can just kind of put this on and chill out. And sometimes that's what you want, and just to be able to kind of put the music on, not that you're going to be disconnected from it, like, oh, I'm going to go, vacuum the house, which you can do, but you can put it on and just kind of and listen to it, and it just kind of creates an atmosphere of kind of just calm and just kind of like, relaxed, and they're not. I don't want this to come off the wrong way. They're not challenging you.
No,
like you have to like invest in like listening to it. They do the heavy lifting to make it easy for you to listen to. Kevin, does that make sense?
Absolutely. You don't always have to be challenged to enjoy. Believe me, it's a nice thing. You can put it on. You could read a book while you're listening to it, and I'm telling you, just to feel good. That's right. And that's
I was in the car for about 45 minutes today, so I was able to put the whole thing on and just kind of enjoy driving the ride I was doing and just kind of getting to where I was going and having these songs just kind of unfurl.
Yep.
And I think maybe, Eric, is this? Do you think this is the place to start for those people that haven't kind of crossed over yet?
Oh, no doubt, absolutely.
Workingman's Dead and this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Absolutely.
And then you said
Skull and Roses for the
honestly, if it were me, if I was going to tell somebody how would I get into the Dead,
hey, you've got
I'd
the opportunity.
I'd start at Workingman's Dead, and I'd work my way across like in order. I'd go Workingman's Dead, Beauty, Skull and Roses, Europe 72, because it really does ease you into who the Dead are and what they're about. It's like it's a really nice progression, and not that Wake of the Flood is a bad record, because it's not, but like those four records are like the Stones when they had that run between Beggar's Banquet and it's that
Exile on Main Street.
Right. It's that same type of 4-album deal. Like when I think of the Dead, those are to me like the touchstones of like where their legacy comes from. If they recorded no other material, those 4 records would seal their fate. So
kind of like Crosby, Stills, and Nash. They weren't very prolific. We right, Eric, when we did our episode on them, I thought I was gobsmacked. I'm like, I thought there was so many albums. It was like 3 in the 70s.
Right. The rest was greatest hits.
One and then one later in the 70s. Right. And it just goes to show that if you've got the right collection, or you hit the right groove at the right time, you can kind of, and Kevin was there for it because you talked about CSN. You can kind of catch that lightning in a bottle, and especially during that era, it seemed like these artists were just very prolific and just kind of going through their metamorphosis, kind of getting, and we've talked about this before too, getting stuff out of the way so they can kind of get to their destination, if that makes sense.
And not being territorial or like adversarial with other bands, because like, Garcia is all over like a lot of the Garcia and a lot of the San Francisco players, I think like some of the Jefferson Airplane and stuff,
Mhm.
worked with Crosby as he started to
Yep.
put his solo records together. And then if you look at this record, it's not just the Five Cats and the Grateful Dead. You've got guys from New Riders of the Purple Sage.
Dave Nelson.
Right. The guy who played keyboards on Broke Down Palace played with Freddie King and the Four Tops and all these people.
Mm.
So it's not just the Dead. Like, it's a willingness to say, well, these cats are going to help
Bring
me.
other people.
Are going to help me achieve my vision. And if I need these people to come along, then great. Like, it's not, I'm trying to compete with these guys, so I don't want anything to do with them.
Kevin, did you realize you gave birth to a musical genius?
Yes, but believe me, nobody knows more than him. I'm telling you, that's it. If he says it, it happened. I'm going to tell you.
If he said it, it must be true.
It must be true. That's right.
Yeah, I think we talked about this, Eric, on our when we did In the Dark, that I always wanted to, even in the 80s when they kind of had that resurgence, I felt I always wanted to go to a Dead concert, even though I wasn't into them, just to have the experience.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, I felt that was an important thing to do, and I just never like kind of pulled myself to do it. But
Yeah.
even then, I recognized, I'm like, because it seemed like it wasn't as much about the music, and I don't mean that in a mean way. It was more about the communal aspect and everybody having a shared experience.
I mean, we even saw it going to see Dead and Company.
Dead and Company.
in
You see
2016.
the people.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
And they're bringing their families along with them now and stuff, and like, just, you know,
Yeah, you could
still see the spinners and all that kind of stuff. It's, you know, and even on some of the tribute band shows we've been to, a lot of them still do all that stuff. So
Yeah, just
Who was the basketball player that was into the
oh God, Bill Walton.
Bill Walton? Any Dead and Company, you saw Bill Walton at the
Really?
concert.
You would walk out and you see him.
tallest guy there. Yeah, he's going to be the tallest guy there.
See his head sticking out of the crowd. He was a big Deadhead.
He's the reason Lithuania was.
Interesting information. In 2003, this was Rolling Stone ranked American Beauty at number 258 in their 500 greatest albums of all time, which was, I think I may even have that original issue, or it was a big thing when Rolling Stone did that, like when they came out with their rankings. The cover is the 57th of best of all time.
Oh wow!
So it's interesting that, you know, this was that time for those classic covers and the artwork, and, you know, all these things were just firing on all the different cylinders, right? And I think that's what made the 70s so great, Eric, right? Is it was not just the music, it was the artwork, it was the whole package that you kind of got. You know,
that album,
yeah, like there was so much put into this, right? We're presenting you, you know, and you can go to the store and you can have this whole thing, you know. And I think, Eric, that's probably something that, even though vinyl is coming back, I think it's something that might be lost. I think there's a kind of
well, it has been lost for quite some time. I mean, you know, it's now a niche thing, but
right, it's not cheap to, you know, the average music fan isn't going to spend $30 or $40 to buy American Beauty,
right?
Unfortunately,
but you know, it just blows my mind that this kind of thing is just in the clouds. Like, you know, it's like, oh, it's just on streaming, and it's not the same experience. As great as streaming is, I'm not knocking it. It's just
when you were a kid and you bought an album,
right?
And the pictures and the posters and all the things you used to get. I mean, you used to sit for hours with it, you know. Right. But
I mean, that's how I mean, you know, some of my, you know, like I first got into music. That was just whatever albums were in the collection that my brother had or whatever. Just slowly but surely they would, you know, come in, and then of course, you know, then cassettes came out, and then, you know, CDs of, you know. So that was more our era, but you know, I cherished the albums that I had. Not many, but I mean, but they were just great. I mean, you didn't care. You didn't care even what you were listening to. When I was a kid, I was listening to some of my parents' music, you know, big band stuff and old rock and roll. But you love the artwork. You love seeing fate, you know, the imagery and the lyrics and just reading who plays on what song and that kind of thing. I always thought was interesting. And then you start, you know, putting two and two together. That's like, you know, that's how our musical knowledge gets there is studying up.
Yeah, the liner notes and I, you know, I put this on earlier today, so it was very intentional. I had to sit down I'm not going to be getting up and skipping over and lifting up the needle. You know, and I think, for Kevin, that this was how you did it. Is
that was the way.
8-Track was still kind of there, but it really wasn't as popular. Is you got the album, you sat down and you gave it your attention.
Now today, I raked my leaves and I listened to American Beauty on my phone on Spotify.
Come on,
let me give it a listen.
Chris,
but that's how it is now. That's how you listen to music. It's at your fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
Get your dad a turntable.
My kids don't even like. I'll never forget. I had to explain to my son what an album was. I think I put the White Album on by the Beatles, and I had to explain it. And he referred to it as a playlist, and I'm like, no, not playlist. And then my daughter the other night, I took her. I was in the car with her. We went to the father-daughter dance at her school, and I put on a record. Ryan Adams had recorded an entire Taylor Swift album in his own style. So I said, this is the compromise. I'm putting this on. And it was his version of 1989. And I said, do you know what song comes next? And her answer to me was, Dad, I usually just put it on shuffle. She doesn't even know album. And she loves to. She'll sing every Taylor Swift song under the sun, but she doesn't know album scene.
Well, I mean, you could tell her that an album is a playlist that the artist put together that they want you to listen
to. That's how I explained it to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we've bemoaned that many times that, certain thing. And I think this album is one of those ones you want to kind of consume it as it was presented and not shuffle it up. And not that it would probably change too much, but there's something for what, I'm a big fan of what the artist intended, even though I say you should have switched this song or that song. They put thought into track listings and albums was a restrictive format. So you had to fit them so they would fit on a side. So there was that consideration as well and all that kind of stuff. But all that had to go into the process and presenting it. And hey, we don't have enough room on the album for this song. So what else do you have? And sometimes they write a song and that becomes the biggest hit that they wrote, like with Asia, I think that happened.
Yeah.
They needed an extra song and it turned out to be Heat of the Moment,
Yeah. It's like a filler. Yep.
Yeah. So, whenever people can, if you're listening to this and you listen to albums, go for the whole thing. I know it's going to be easy to kind of in today's, to skip. Oh, Truckin' is next. Let me skip, or let me get to the one. Take the journey with the music. I think that's really what I think
good way to put it. Yep.
What it was, what the original intent was. We've got music at our fingertips. It's so easy. And I'm just as guilty of when I have a thing on shuffling. Because it becomes so easy to do. But that's why when I get something on vinyl or have the vinyl, I want to listen to it because I gotta plop my butt in the chair, drop the needle, sit there, and it does sound better. I love, even though this had some pops and scratches and it had a skip in it. It just had to skip in it. I had to get a new one. It still, to me, still sounded better.
And the other thing too is like it's a little easier to do with some of the more classic records, especially from the 70s and stuff, and even into the 80s, because I think we've had this conversation before. Like American Beauty is 41 minutes. Like by the time you get to like when I was in high school and the CD was a big thing, like it's okay. We're gonna fill up every fucking
20 songs.
Yeah, and it's like 80. It's 80 minutes of music, and it's like and some of it's not really shouldn't be released. It's not releasable stuff.
It's all filler.
Right, 45 minutes. What could fit on the side of a 90-minute cassette tape when you were making tapes?
Yeah, you had to give your best. You were limited by the format, and like Chris said, when CDs came, I was like, oh, we could fit 70 or 80 minutes on a CD, so let's do it. Not whether or not you should, but because you had the ability to. It's like, oh, well, we got to give people 18 or 20 songs. It's like, don't necessarily need it, but I digress. But and any closing thoughts, Eric, as we wind down?
No, I just think that it's just a pleasure to actually talk about the coming together and just like-minded. I enjoy the company. I enjoy the music, and it's just a lot of fun, guys.
We're 3324 and company.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Like that, huh? I just made that up on the fly. Just came up with that myself.
That was pretty good.
Kevin, and any closing thoughts on American Beauty? You were there, right? Was this Earthshot? Was this like really that groundbreaking when it came out to you, or was this just another? Was this another one in the flip through?
Can I tell you something? It was a big thing when they came out 4 months later with a new album. Everybody was saying, I can't believe they're putting out a new album. But they just had such a successful album, Working Man's Dead. But I'm going to tell you, it was 2 great albums that came out that year. And like I said before in the beginning, if they had only done these 2 albums, we'd still be talking about the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they were great.
It's not quantity; it's quality.
It's quality.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Some you don't have to make 50 albums or whatever, or what's the average? Like an artist
Now it's
make
like one every 3 years, if that.
Well,
Yeah.
Back in the day, you maybe
it's
had maybe
understanding.
10. That's a fair number? 10 albums. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Or if it's understanding that if you're in a prolific groove, to go with it, right? And sometimes that means putting out 2. Zeppelin put out two a year for a while, right?
Right. Yeah.
Chris, any closing thoughts on American Beauty?
What I would say is I just think it's amazing. Like, they went from basically being wrote off by the record company to being like really prolific. And like I said, if you're going to get into the Dead, you start with Working Man, you come to this, and then to the end. And American Beauty is one of those. It's an American classic. When people talk about the classic, like, it's an Americana record, but it's also like kind of a big part of the American songbook. I really think it's an important part of the American songbook. So.
Yeah. I think they really kind of came into their own. In this era, and kind of figured out the secret sauce, what it was going to be, and then from there, kind of just went with it. Hey, we're just going to continue touring. There was that great. I think it was on Prime. It was like a seven episode documentary I watched about them.
Yes,
that was the one I was talking about before. I can't remember the name of the freaking documentary. It's driving me crazy.
It's not What a Long Strange Trip It's Been, right? It's not.
No, it's not.
But it was made by a guy named Anton Bar-Levy, I think is his name. I can't think of the name of the freaking.
But
it's
good.
It's Long Strange Trip.
It's called Long Strange Trip.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Yeah, it is called Long Strange Trip. So you guys can check that out. That's on Amazon Prime. So I think that's going to do it for this episode. This is obviously available on streaming, so it's there for you to consume in any way you like. But we really want you to just kind of listen to it, just kind of hang out, chill out. Don't do anything. You can, but you know what? Sometimes just sit down and listen to a record, or listen to it and just kind of be still. And kind of let it wash over you, kind of like the old days, Kevin.
And like I told Dean earlier this week, for those harmonies, if you can get a good set of headphones, and it's actually a good record to listen to on headphones.
Yeah, it's definitely out there. So that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. If you made it this far, go ahead and follow, like, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. We're on YouTube, so if you want to see the video and all the accoutrements, the show and tell that I had, it'll be there on our YouTube video. You can check it out there. You can subscribe there too as well, because we've got all the audio and the video versions there. Christopher Clark, thank you so much.
Thank you again, man. Good to be here.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Unfortunately, Felix Pappalardi couldn't be here, but his understudy is here today.
If you ever do Mountain, I'm back. Don't worry.
Leslie West. Kevin Clark, thank you so much for bringing your considerable talent there. I love getting your point of view on these things, because you were there when these things happened. It's easy for us to look at it through the rearview mirror, but I also love hearing what the feeling was at the time.
Okay.
Very important.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. And as for Eric and myself, Eric's going to be on his comfy couch. I'm going to be in my new 80s dental office chair with my purple cushion on it for maximum comfort. So for Kevin, for Chris, and for Eric, this has been Dean. We will catch you on the flip side.